This is the Weekend Jazz Update with Yashan De Silva. On this week's episode, it's about Shabaka Hutchins, his biography and best hits. During this summer, we're going to be talking about some of his best albums of all time. Here's a quick recap of what's coming up. So after the initial breakthrough, Shabaka's music only got deeper and more focused. Lest we forget what we came here to do, expand Sons of Kemet sound. Bigger hooks, long grooves, and that amazing double drum propulsion. Then comes Trust in the Life Force of the Deep Mystery by the Comet Is Coming. Still dynamic but more communal, Summon the Fire becomes a chant audiences join in live, turning concerts into shared rituals. With We Are Sent Here by History, Shabaka and the Ancestors confront colonialism and survival head-on. Pitchfork describes it as music that's heavy but healing. And Black to the Future in 2021 brings Sons of Kemet to a peak. Protest and party coexist. Guest voices like Koji Radical and Leanne LaHarper set grime and soul, while the grooves keep bodies moving. It's defiant, celebratory, and unforgettable. And this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Yashan De Silva. On this week's episode, it's about Shabaka Hutchins, his biography and best hits. During this summer, we're going to be talking about some of his best albums of all time. Let's start with Sons of Kemet because this is where the band hits. Back in 2015, they dropped Lest We Forget What We Came Here to Do, and this is where the sound really locks in. You've got that now iconic setup, sax up front, tuba holding down the low end, and two drummers driving everything like a runaway train. This album feels ceremonial and celebratory at the same time, like a street parade that accidentally turns into a spiritual awakening. Tracks like In Memory of Sami Reward just hypnotize you with that looping sax line, pounding drums underneath, and then Shabaka takes off into this urgent, fiery solo. But it's not all intensity. A tune like Play Mars shows a softer side, almost tender, almost reflective. This record is a big reason Sons of Kemet went from London jazz secret to an international recognized force. Now fast forward 2019 and we switch spacecrafts to the Comet Is Coming with Trust in the Life Force of the Deep Mystery. Same sax, totally different universe. This is jazz seen through synths, drum machines, and pure cosmic chaos. If you've ever seen them live, you know, and if you haven't, imagine a club turning into a ritual. The track Summon the Fire is legendary for a reason. It's built on this chant-like groove where the audience literally joins in wordless, riding the repeated saxophone into orbit. The album crackles with energy, heavy synth bass, frantic drums, ecstatic melodies that feel spiritual without being calm. And what's interesting here is that beneath all that dance floor intensity, you can hear them starting to explore deeper modes, darker spaces. This record is loud, but it's also searching. And then in 2020, Shabaka pivots again, this time with Shabaka and the Ancestors and the stunning We Are Sent Here by History. This one hits different. It's a concept album, politically charged, rooted deeply in African history and South African jazz traditions. You've got songs in Zulu, Xhosa, and English, stories about colonialism, survival, rage, and resilience. Musically, it's intense. Horns scream, rhythms surge, and at times it feels almost apocalyptic. Pitchfork describes it as music that makes you feel less alone in your rage, and that's powerful. But what really sticks is that despite the heaviness, this album doesn't leave you hopeless. It channels that anger into something communal, something healing. It's not background music, it demands attention. And then comes 2021 and Sons of Kemet return with Black to the Future. This is protest music you can dance to, and that's not a contradiction. The Guardian called it an eloquent dance between anger and joy, and that's exactly what it is. Those twin drummers and their tube groove hit very hard, while Shabaka's sax alternates between explosive solos and chant-ready melodies. This album also brings in voices, Koji Radical, Leanne LaHarper, adding grime, soul, and urgency. There's defiance here, but also celebration. The final message feels clear. Resistance doesn't have to be joyless. And that was some insight in some of Shabaka Hutchins' best albums of all time, and this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Yashan De Silva. And you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Yashan De Silva. This week's episode is about Shabaka Hutchins, his biography and best hits. Now it's time for some trendy music news. Award-winning jazz singer and songwriter Eugenie Jones is kicking off her Women in Jazz Month national tour. It launches March 6th at Denver Dazzle Jazz Club. From there, she's taking coast to coast. Atlanta's Velvet Note on March 14th, San Francisco's Mr. Tipples on March 20th, and wrapping it up on March 27th at Seattle's Royal Room. This tour is part of the global celebration of Women in Jazz Month, honoring trailblazers like Billie Holiday, Nina Simone, and Ella Fitzgerald. Eugenie Jones is known for her seductive smoke and satin vocals, magnetic stage presence, and emotionally rich songwriting. Critics call her one of the most beautiful voices in jazz today, and her album Eugenie spent 25 weeks on the Jazz Week's top 50, cracking the top 5. She's earned Vocalist of the Year honors, major industry awards, and praise from legends like NEA Jazz Master Reggie Workman, who calls her a source of light. If you want world-class vocals, killer musicianship, and serious soul, this is the show. Tickets and info now available at eugeniejones.com. And there was some trendy music news on the Weekend Jazz Update with Yashan De Silva. We're going for a short break, we'll be right back after that. When we come back, we're going to be talking about some of Shabaka Hutchins' best albums of all time. Stay tuned. This is the Weekend Jazz Update with Yashan De Silva. On this week's episode, it's about Shabaka Hutchins, his biography and best hits. During this summer, we're going to be talking about some of his best albums of all time. Here's a quick recap of what's coming up. In 2023, Shabaka announced a hiatus from the saxophone, citing burnout, and playing his final live sax show that December. What followed wasn't silence, it was transformation. The shift begins with African culture, short solo electronic play from 2022, ambient, meditative, and global in feel. Shakuhachi flute, kora bells, slow music that still hums with energy. Even at his calmer, Shabaka's voice cuts through. That part leads to Perceive Its Beauty, Acknowledge Its Grace, released in 2024 on Impulse. His first full solo album replaces sax-led intensity with piano, flute, and breath. The tenor sax only appears once, and that moment carries real emotional weight. Guests include Jason Moran, Moses Sumney, and Andre 3000 on flute. There's also hyperdimensional expansion being by The Comet Is Coming, pure cosmic chaos, and his early appearance on Last Evenings on Earth with Melt Yourself Down, a wild fusion of jazz, punk, and global dance. Taken together, this era shows Shabaka not retreating but reimagining what jazz and listening itself can be. And you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Yashan Silva. On this week's episode, it's about Shabaka Hutchins, his biography, and best hits. During this hour, we're going to be talking about more of his best albums of all time. We start off with Hyperdimensional Expansion being released in 2022. Even the title tells you what you're in for. This album is pure Afro-futuristic adrenaline. This is jazz as sci-fi myth. Tracks like Code come out swinging with hip-hop influenced beats, distorted synths, and Shabaka's saxes tearing through the mix. One reviewer said that it'll peel off the socks off unshod feet, and honestly, it's intense, experimental, genre-melting, part jazz, part punk, part rap, all energy. This is the Comet at full throttle. And then almost shockingly, Shabaka goes quiet. In 2024, he releases Perceive Its Beauty, Acknowledge Its Grace, his first full solo album. If you're expecting sax fireworks, forget it. The tenor sax only appears once, and it's intentional. This album leans into piano, flute, soft percussion atmosphere. It's meditative, spiritual, and deeply introspective. You've got collaborators like Jason Moran, Moses Sumney, even Andre 3000 on flute. After years of intensity, this feels like an artist stepping back, listening, and finding beauty in stillness. That turn inward actually starts earlier with 2022's African Culture, a short solo electronic play that quietly signaled this shift. Here, Shabaka blends global instruments, kora, bells, flutes. Tracks like Call It European Paradox feel suspended in time, and yet even in this ambient space, his energy hasn't disappeared. On Italy's Vital, his flute playing surges with the same urgency you'd expect from his sax work. It's different but unmistakably him. And one more essential stop, Melt Yourself Down's Last Evenings on Earth from 2016. This album is a wild fusion of jazz, punk, funk, electronic beats, and global rhythms, tabla, dance grooves, raw saxophone melodies. It's chaotic in the best way. A cult favorite, Mercury shortlisted, and proof that wherever Shabaka shows up, the temperature rises. So whether he's summoning fire, honoring history, or shaking dance floors, or sitting quietly with the flute, one thing stays constant. This is an artist who refuses to stand still, and these albums prove it. And there was some insight into more of Shabaka Hutchins' best albums of all time. And you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Yashan Silva. On this week's episode, it's about Shabaka Hutchins, his biography, and best hits. We've come to an end of this week's episode of the show, so now it's time to recap what we're talking about on today's program. Born in London and raised partly in Barbados, Shabaka came up through the UK jazz scene with deep roots in Caribbean rhythm, African history, and the spiritual side of jazz. He's a saxophonist, a bandleader, a composer, but more than that, he's a connector, someone who treats jazz not as a genre but as a living language. Shabaka first caught widespread attention through multiple projects at once, which is part of what made him so compelling. He wasn't just leading one band, he was building entire worlds. Sons of Kemet, The Comet Is Coming, and Shabaka and the Ancestors all sound different, but they share a common purpose, rhythm as ritual, music as message. So if you're new to his catalog, here are 5 essential albums that tell the story. To start off with Burned by Sons of Kemet, raw, urgent, and powered by double drums and tuba. It introduced an unmistakable marching energy. Then move to Lest We Forget What We Came Here to Do, where Sons of Kemet tightened the grooves and deepened the emotional range. For something more cosmic, here's The Comet Is Coming, trust in the life force of the deep mystery, heavy synths, dance floor momentum, and live show anthems like Summon the Fire. If you want the most intense statement, We Are Sent Here by History by Shabaka and the Ancestors, confronting colonialism and survival head-on, challenging, powerful, unforgettable. And finally, Black to the Future. Sons of Kemet at their most joyful and poetical, blending jazz, hip-hop, and spoken word into a celebration of resistance. Shabaka Hutchins isn't just shaping modern jazz, he's expanding what it can mean. And there was some insight into everything that we discussed on this week's episode of the Weekend Jazz Update with Yashan Silva. And on that note, we've come to an end of this week's episode of the show. Don't forget, you can check out the archives of today's show on my YouTube channel, the Weekend Jazz Update with Yashan. So I'll see you again next week. Have a great week ahead.